So here we have a collection of Jules Steiner's dolls from the upcoming auction, and it's a wonderful collection. I think Jules Steiner's dolls tend to really not get the appreciation they deserve. Luckily, there was a wonderful book done some years back by Dorothy McGonigal on the dolls of Jules Steiner, and if any of you can obtain it, long out of print, you should. It has lots of great information. And then in the French Encyclopedia, there are wonderful pages. I mean, he could have written a book too with the information he had by Francois and Danielle Timer about Jules Steiner. And that's where you'll learn this wonderful story I just related to you about Burgoyne. Jules Steiner was one of the first. A lot of people consider him to be the first bébé maker because his gigoteur, you know, the wind-up doll that kicks its feet and things like that, in a sense is a bébé, and that came out in the late 1860s. So you have a lot of good examples of that. Then he moved on to different type of things and eventually morphing into what we consider the bébé, the child doll with articulated body. But one of his earliest ones, in fact, many of his earliest ones he makes are unmarked. They can have a solid dome head or they can have a cut pate, but they will not have markings on the back, and you simply have to learn to identify their face, and this is a very, very good example of one. These would not be from the figure group or the series group. This is simply an unmarked Jules Steiner, and if they're unmarked, they almost invariably are from the early period and have a very, very special look that many collectors really love. I'm going to move her back so I can have a little more movement here of things. Now I'm going to show you some of the other that he produced, which are really very, very wonderful. First of all, let me do the figures. The figures were the ones that were found most commonly, marked with a letter, but instead of saying SIE for series, it would say FRE for figure, and then followed by a letter. That was how he marked his dolls. So our tall girl standing at the back is a figure B, and very, very noticeable. I want you to look at her teeth. This was a very common technique used by Steiner. Some of his dolls have closed mouth. Many of them will have a slightly parted lips with a double row of tiny little porcelain teeth. That had to be very, very difficult to accomplish. Unlike their later German dolls that are almost invariably, in cataloging them over the years, 4 porcelain teeth they'll have on the top of their mouth. To have a doll that would have 2 rows of multiple tiny porcelain teeth like this had to take an expert attention to detail and design of how this could be accomplished. And it gives them a very, very realistic look. A very beautiful example here in what looks to be its original factory or store costume. A very lovely example of this wonderful doll. Now let me show you another doll, because I talked to you a little bit ago about the Burgoyne stamp on the dolls, on the Steiner dolls, and I want to show you what that mark looks like. I found one doll that it's very easy to lift her wig and you can see what I'm talking about. The doll not only has her incised marking of her model number, but it has the red ink script across the top that says it's registered by Burgoyne for Steiner. And while I'm here, I can feel it, so let me also show you. See what I'm doing back and forth on this little wire lever? Well, now wait, I'm going to turn the doll around, and you're going to see what happens with that little wire lever, because this is something else that Steiner did. He introduced his wire lever eyes. And those of you who are lucky enough to ever own a doll like this, be sure you take the pate and the wig off and look inside that head, because on the back of the eyes, you know what you'll find? Jules Steiner's signature. He was very proud of this design he had and very proud of the eyes that were being made, so he signed all of his eyes. Very, very distinctive feature. And something else about this girl, do you notice? Look, bisque hands. This was something else he introduced. It's very uncommon to find them on the Steiner doll. It was obviously a luxury detail that some of his stores had requested, and he would accommodate them, and the hands are just absolutely beautiful. But these wonderful original bisque hands. Okay, sweetheart, you have to move to the back of the room. You've had your day in court. Now, let's show some of these other wonderful little dolls. I'm going to move them up this way. The girl with the surprise look over here also, by the way, has the wire lever eyes. And I'm going to open and close her eye. Let me see, are they going? Yes, open, closed, open, closed. So she can open and close her eyes. And that was really the beginning of the whole sleep eye type of situation. This is now one of the series dolls, one of the rare series dolls that were only made for, we think, like during an 8-year period. And this is marked Series G. And she has the wire eyes, and she has, look at her mouth, closed mouth, because you can also find this doll with an open mouth. You could find the doll with paperweight eyes and closed mouth, with wire eyes and open mouth. He combined these different variations of things, so there was a choice for the consumer as to what doll they actually wanted to have. And in a way, he kind of foresaw what the Germans would be doing later on with their doll, where they would have the very same mold number, and it could be wigged or solid domed or glass-eyed or painted eye, open mouth or closed mouth. He was trying to offer a variety of technicalities within a certain model number. So this is a very, very rare doll in her original factory costume as well. Now, this little doll right here, in the little white dress, absolutely, absolutely wonderful. She is marked Series G. Series G, considered to be one of the rarest of the models. And her face is so exquisite and so perfect and very different from a look. If you know dolls and you're a cognizati on French dolls and you walked into a room and saw this, your immediate hunch would not be to say, oh, there's a Steiner. She has a different look to her, very different. I'm going to turn her around so you can actually see the back of this outstanding little bonnet she's wearing. Wow. I mean, everything about her is so great, that precious little body. One thing about Steiner is that they really worked on, the bodies are entirely different than, for example, Gemot, or in fact most other of the French bodies. They're very, very lightweight. And the pates also, by the way, they have a distinctive pate on a Steiner doll. I know most of you know this, but for those of you who are new, let me just tell you, it's not a cork pate. It's like a cardboard pate, but like a purple, almost a grayish purple paper mache, very distinctive pate that fits very neatly, not on top of the cut at the back of the head, but fits into it. Very distinctive, and you always kind of want to hope that your doll will have that as well. So I'll let her sit over here or stand over here with her sister. And we have this wonderful little girl right here, which we showed you just a minute ago. And then I wanted to show you these two. I love these two. If you think that French dolls don't have character expressions, well, you haven't seen these dolls, because they, to me, their character expressions are so unbelievably developed. Now, the big girl with the basket, she is the Series E. Series E. And if you can see, she has a closed mouth and she has paperweight eyes. She does not have the lever eyes. And I don't know, the expression on her, it's mischievous, it's alert, it's excited, it's just like, what is down the road for me? I'm going down to see, and I'm taking my basket in case I find a treasure, because she is wonderful. And again, I will call to your attention, extremely rare. If you ever find a doll with this marking, you want to grab it right away, because this is marked SIE, abbreviation for series, Series E of the Steiner, and with the original Steiner body. Oh, dropped her basket, but look at her check out her dress and her bonnet at the back. Absolutely wonderful. Now, we have her little friend in the white pinafore. And this is a very, very rare model to find from the series, a very rare. This is Series B, letter B. And again, the expression, it's pert, I don't know, it's just so different from your classic French doll, which tends to be very elegant and dreamy and refined. This little girl, she's full of mischief. But look at her complexion. It has that wonderful Steiner complexion, very, very pale, delicate bisque, and the eyes, they just pop out at you. They're absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Very, very deep, almost like the AT doll that I showed you a while ago in the clarity of the eyes. I don't know if the camera can pick them up or not, if that's the right angle. But it would be, if you could see how beautiful those eyes are. And she does have also the original Steiner body. If you study your dolls enough and have the opportunity to handle enough, you'll know the minute you pick up a Steiner whether it has the right body on it. You don't even have to look at it because the weight is so much lighter than other French dolls. She's absolutely beautiful. And let me now go to, I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to do those two. But this is the one that we showed you already with the little dolls, but I think you deserve to see it again. And I'm going to fix her bonnet, and then I'm going to turn her around so you can see her all the way around. This is, wow. Everything, you know how there are some dolls you can say, all right, here's the good points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you count them. And then a couple negatives you might have. This one, there's no negatives. She is perfect in every single way. Everything, she's gorgeous. Her costume is wonderful. She's a very rare model. She is the Series C, so she's not a figure model. She's a Series C model from Steiner, and everything about her is absolutely grand. Now, and here's your little basket back. Okay, I want to come over here because I'm going to leave the series and I'm going to talk to you about the figure dolls. The figure A from Steiner is by far, and I'll hold this one up first, is by far his most, you find it most commonly of any of the Steiners. It was evidently his bread and butter doll over a period of years. But a lot of different variations can be found. And I wanted to show you this one in particular. I hope I'm holding it steady because this is so tiny. And that is a precious thing to find because not only is she tiny, but she has an articulated body. Her elbows bend back and forth, and she has her wonderful original store chemise and her wonderful original blonde mohair wig. So that's a gem of a doll. But on this side, oh, this is a doll. Wow. This is the doll that was acquired from a Theriault auction about 15 years ago, and the collector had decided to part with it, mostly because she's moved to a smaller place and her shelves aren't tall enough to accommodate this masterpiece of a doll. This is a Jules Steiner figure A with the most beautiful brown complexion, and it's a particular doll. It carries the insignia, the stamp of the Paris, luxury Paris doll shop, Au Nom Bleu, who presented the doll in this costume. And the costume is that of La Parachole, which was an opera composed by Oppenheim and popular throughout the 1800s in Paris, in London, in New York, and around the world. And it's a story, La Parachole was a Peruvian, the stage name of a Peruvian actress, and that this was supposedly her story that was performed in opera form. So she's wearing her Peruvian costume here, her luxury, royalty Peruvian costume. And why this costume was made and presented on this doll, we don't know. Was it for a world exposition? Was it a special exclusive model? Was the opera being presented in Paris at that time and they wanted to have a doll that featured that? We don't know, but just it has been preserved so preciously over all these years. Let me turn it around so you can see the back as well, that it is an absolute, absolute treasure. She has her, quote, diamond earrings. She's holding her little sack here. She has her gold beads. And I'll tell you what else. Costume aside, her complexion is absolutely flawless. It is just wonderful. And on the brown complexion dolls, that's just really important to have because rubs will really show up on them, whereas on some of the white complexion ones, the rubs, you know, they don't show up as much. But on here, to have a flawless complexion like that it's priceless. And she has her wonderful original body as well. So that, again, one of the absolute treasures of this auction coming up. And I hope someone who loves opera will win the doll. Loves opera and dolls, and that would be a great combination. And just so you think that we only have Jumeau and Steiner in this auction, I wanted to show you some of the other fabulous French dolls, just a selection of the ones coming up, many of them in their original factory costumes and all of them in wonderful antique costumes at the very least. Standing here tall up at the top is a beautiful example of Brujon from the 1886 period, where she has the kid body that you're able to actually pose in a more realistic way than the earlier Bébé models. Has beautiful bisque hands. I'll wave it to you so you can see. And a wonderful deep blue paperweight eyes and great, great expression. A very classic example. It must have been a very luxurious doll during its time period. In the front, over on the far end, is a model by Falk and Roussel. Falk and Roussel, name you don't hear too often. I would say probably if we have 2 Falk and Roussel bébés a year come along, that would be a good amount. Very distinctive kind of face. You notice it right away. In a lot of ways, it almost has like a German look to it, like an early Simon and Halbig look. But the company did not appear to have existed for a very long time, and they did not have a very, very big production of dolls. So when you can find one, they're an absolute treasure, and they do have beautiful, beautiful eyes and a beautiful look. And then we have our wonderful friends from Schmidt et Fils, the Schmidt firm of Paris. And 2 distinctive models that the company did are both represented in this auction. The taller girl has the very round face look that many collectors really prefer, cherish. It has a much more almost of a German look than a French bébé, and that can trace a lot to Schmidt's beginnings in that part of France, in the eastern part of France. But very, very distinctive look. And then he also made his little doll, which I always describe it as the pear-shaped face, because it has almost that shape. It's much more angular. It's lost its roundness. It's almost like an older child. And so some collectors prefer this. Schmidt bodies are also very, very distinctive. You want to look to make sure if it has a different body, that's okay. It just might reflect on the price you'd be willing to pay for it. But if it does have the original body that Schmidt made, very distinctive, because at the back, where the butt comes down, if you're looking at it on a profile, the bottom of the butt is always flat. It's like a flat ridge. If you turned it upside down, you could put a thimble on top of it. And that's where you will find the body markings for the Schmidt company. Francois Gaultier produced dolls for many, many people, but sometimes produced them for themselves. And this is an example of a doll that would bear their markings. And I want to show it to you because there are 2 different markings you'll find on the Gaultier marked bébés. Remember, they made dolls for other people as well, but then they produced some under their own name. The earliest ones have this early block letter styling with the F, then a number in the middle, and then the G. The number in the middle standing for the size. After about 1888, you're going to find the same initials, FG, but they're going to appear inside like a scroll mark. Very, very different mark. These 2 little girls are fighting over their tag. There we go. Okay. And it depends which look you like. This is a softer look. It's almost like the early portrait Jumeaus in a way. The later one is much more dramatic, extravagant, with like rich eyebrow painting or eyeshadow painting. So whichever you like, they both have their fans. At the front, we have a doll by a maker you find very, very seldom, and that is called the Bébé Theriault by Theriault et Fils. And again, a company that made dolls only for a short time. Different kind of markings you'll find on them. Sometimes it's a B period, M period. Sometimes, just different variations of their markings. And a kind of a checkered career that the company had didn't exist for too long. So to find an example of their doll is a very, very rare treasure that you really want to cherish. Jumeau was so popular that there were, I want to move these so I can show you both of them at the same time. Jumeau dolls were so popular that some people wanted to copy him. In fact, some people who were ex-employees and left his firm, oh, those things happened then too, decided that they would copy their old boss and capitalize on the name that he had made for the famous Bébé of France. And so they made dolls which looked, at first glance, exactly like the Bébé Jumeau. And here we have two examples of these dolls. They are both marked with a red stamp, just like Jumeau would have put Tête Jumeau on his. They put a red stamp, Paris Bébé. And they, in their advertising, in all their marketing, and all the talk they did in the presentation of the costumes, they wanted to be known as, they wanted people to buy them and think they were getting a Jumeau, which they weren't. They're very lovely dolls in themselves. Well, you know, Emile did not take kindly to this. This fellow had worked for him for years, given him a good living. Then he quit, went out and started to make dolls on his own, copying Jumeau in every way. So Jumeau sued him, and he won the lawsuit. So Daniel, Monsieur Daniel, who had started this, had to close down his operation, and all of the existing parts were given to Emile Jumeau, all of the existing bodies and heads and all. So Jumeau did damage some of them, destroy some of them, and actually use some of the body parts. What you hope to find is what you have found here. Two examples of the dolls by Daniel that have his original head and his original body. Body very distinctive, almost exactly like the Jumeau, but it has a stamp on it in the shape of the Eiffel Tower. So that's how you identify the Danielle AC bodies. And this one is wearing her factory original costume, the one in coral. And very, very nice. I'll turn it around so you can see it from the back as well. These are a little crowded here. It's a wonderful costume. Very sweet faces. They were very beautiful dolls. The man had a dream, but he should have had more imagination and not made one man's success try to make that his. That's what happens. And this was the other example of it. And then two other examples that we have I want to show you. And this is a doll by the doll maker Henri Delcroix, Delcroix. And I spell it for you because you may not have heard of him, and you won't find too many examples of his dolls. They show up very seldom. Clearly was a small company, and one that did not last for a great number of years. So to find any of his dolls are a great, great treasure, and this is a beautiful example. And we began this table full with Brou, and I'm going to end it with Brou. And this is the earlier period Brou. This is their first period, the Bébé Brevette. I showed you one wearing a red dress earlier, a tiny one. And here is a taller girl, brown-eyed, beautiful bisque shoulder plate, so the head can pivot either one way or the other, and beautiful bisque hands, and then with the kid gusset jointed body. Again, this is the model of Brou that I tell people. In my opinion, there's so much opportunity here. It has so much potential for appreciation. I love the face. It's very gentle, very soft face, and most collectors prefer the Brujune, the later face, and so you have to choose what you like the best because that's what it should be all about.